definitely the near and dear reason why I chose to call Solle Naturals home is definitely the founders and executive team, because they're unmatched anywhere. And I would challenge you, you will not find them. You will not find this caliber of people anywhere on any executive team. And tonight, I want to introduce you to the principal founder and the president and CEO of Solle Naturals, Greg Halliday. Now, prior to founding Solle Naturals, Greg had spent 25 years in the natural health industry, and 20 of those years with a very large, successful, publicly traded herbal company. And he served as an officer in the company for 10 years and as president of the US division in his final 6 years. He has a passion to increase awareness in his belief that true wellness can only be attained through proper nourishment of both the body and the mind. And I have asked him if he would be willing to share what the origin of Solle, like the origin story of how Solle came to be. So, Greg?
Thanks, Erica. I'll do my very best to be brief. It's hard to, you know this, it's hard to always, it's not always easy to share our life-changing stories because they happen over, usually a long period of time. And I do appreciate your introduction. You got me thinking back, because before Solle, and part of the founding story had to do with all those 20 years, 20 of those 25 were dealing with natural alternatives to health, and also the viability of making that a business and focusing your business and your life on educating and helping other people and being there for them. I mean, we call it direct selling or network marketing. I kind of like to call it mentor marketing, because that's what kind of sets it apart. At least as I look at leaders that I've so much admired over the years and here at Solle, because they're more than just sort of relationship marketing. They're just mentors to so many people, and they teach others to be that. And I personally believe that those personal successes in health don't happen if we don't have good mentors, or at least not very frequently. After those 20 years, we dealt with a company that had 600 products, 300 when I arrived, and we launched 300 of them, 300 in 20 years. And we really dealt with this, okay, there's this going on. You can use a drug for this. Here's a natural alternative. So part of the Solle story is that, the most expensive way to deal with your health, even naturally, is to look at individual symptoms and problems and just try to plug them and fix them. It is, to me, better because you work with the body to work naturally, but it's really difficult and can be frustrating for people. And that's one thing I saw over the years. A lot of people, I would venture to say 80% or more, did not stick with it because they didn't take enough of the herbs or take it long enough, or because they were just focusing on this one thing and they weren't looking at the whole balance as a whole in health. They didn't see the success they wanted and sort of gave up on it. I can't say that was concrete and articulate in my mind. It's one of those things that in the back of my mind, I see now was forming. And what happened that really led to Solle was in the middle of this really good company, lots of natural products. I had traveled the US very extensively. I can't tell you how many homes and stores and offices I've been in, because I was not a sit in the office type of president. I wanted to see and hear and listen. And so through all this, I learned, well, my wife, her name's Donna. And if you, I don't know if you're familiar with Solle at all, she has recorded her story. She recorded it 10 years after. So that was as early as she felt comfortable. She was very comfortable always in sharing, but to sit down and relive it on recording wasn't something she was ready to do for a while, because it was like, I guess for all of us, those really hard surprises, like Lydia said, sometimes we feel like we barely make it through them. And if it weren't for great people, great blessings in our life, we somehow wonder if we would have made it through. And that's the way it was for us. Toward the end of my time at the other company, even though Donna used lots of herbs, and I could tell you a dozen major success stories in health for her and her family because of these herbs. They were all on prescription drugs from age 10 or 11 for severe female issues at very young ages and related issues. All of that solved. So this is someone who'd been using natural healing for forever. And all of a sudden we have 6 children. One of them's a boy, 5 are girls. We had 4 girls, really wanted that boy. So the 5th one, Donna's pregnant with Ethan, who just graduated from high school this week, past week. And she got this severe depression and can't figure out, neither can either of us, why in the past these herbs were enough and they're not now. In fact, she took in large quantities and they weren't enough. So long story short, we found ourselves in a situation we couldn't overcome. We were supposed to go on a trip to China for, ended up being there for 3 weeks. She was going to come for half of it with me. And things we could tell were significantly off. She went into the doctor and she shares this about as badly as you can score on a mental health exam. What I mean by that is they want you to check into the hospital now. Bad is how it ended up with her, but she was educated enough in health to know that was going to be drugs to numb the pain. And they probably are necessary at times for people. At certain bridges to make it through, avoiding harm to themselves. But Donna knew, she knew kind of the consequences. And she said, I'm not going to go and do that, but I will go to my doctor. She immediately got on Zoloft. That was something she knew was a bridge. She knew she wanted to learn more and figure out how to get off. And that changed her life very temporarily. For a number of months, she was really good while she continued taking herbs. People always ask about that. She continued to take all the herbs because she actually felt something better with the herbs than just alone. And then the body, because it's a drug, started to react and the effects were less and less. So naturally, doctor says, let's raise the dose. And that happens 3 or 4 times until she gets to the max dose of Zoloft. At the time she got to that point and it was starting to lessen effect again, and she really started to get scared again. Coincidentally, at this time I was president of the half of the company. I always had a dinner with the up and coming leaders. And I sat by a woman named Patricia who just glowed. And I always asked him, what got you into these crazy herbs? I would say it that way. And she told me a severe depression. So she doesn't know what our family's going through. She told me her whole story. It was terribly difficult what she went through. It would be difficult for me to even recount her story to you because there's some hard things in it. And long story short, she shared an herbal program that involved Chinese formulas that were more concentrated than the usual. I went home and shared that with Donna. That was the beginning of our journey with home, and that was Solle, and that was the beginning of our journey with adaptogens. Now, Solle wasn't even a figment of my imagination. I'm not one of those people that had a bucket list to do this. I'll be really transparent with you. I probably would have just had things been different and there weren't a change in board and they kept this focus on people and health and development, I probably would have stayed. That wasn't meant to be, obviously. And Donna, I went home that night. And like I say, it was a huge blessing. I know now there's nothing coincidental about it. Told her the whole story. She said, I want to add those formulas to what I'm doing with the Zoloft. She added them, but that meant taking 60 some odd capsules every day. And then she herself, she talked with her doctor. Her doctor said, oh, you can get off anytime. That was not true. She had tried it 2 or 3 times. But anyway, doctor knew, doctor was aware. And she backed herself slowly down. And long story short, in about 3 or 4 months, she did most of the backing down. She sort of had what she'd call maybe a crutch dose every couple of days, a fraction of a dose. And that lasted for another 3 or 4 months. And then we had a trip to Alaska. And she forgot the Zoloft, but she remembered her herbs. So she's taking 30 to 60 capsules a day. And she didn't even miss it on this cruise. And she said, I know I'm good now. I didn't think I could do without the Zoloft at all. So she was probably taking the Zoloft for a little more than 2 years. It's now been 15 years. since she's been on the Zoloft. When all the changes happened at the other company, that was the first point that I considered doing something else. I took a long time. I took a couple of years after thinking, studying, turning down other opportunities. And when I got to a point where I stayed focused on why these herbs worked with Donna and not all the others, what's the difference? I've discovered the light bulb went on for me. I needed to learn. The difference was the adaptogens in them. And I immersed myself in that. A lot of things coincidentally fell into place with other partners and the other founders of Solle. That's another whole story, how that fell into place for the timing for them. And Solle was off and running with all of our formulas containing adaptogens so that everything we do nutritionally deals with nutritional support for physical wellness along with the corollary mental. And that really simply is the process. And there's a lot more of that story, but that's how it happened. Erica.
I love the story of Solle. I have often felt that Solle is like a love story, and not just with you and Donna, but like all the pieces of the founders coming together and the deep connection that you have. And I am so grateful to be able to be a witness to this incredible synergy as well. Before I let you go tonight, though, I want to ask you one more question, and that is, what do you see now? It's been 10 years later, right? What do you see for the future, for the vision? Like, what gets you excited about what's coming up next?
That is a hard question, Erica. Harder than you think, perhaps. Or maybe you know it's hard and that's why you asked. But I think the reason that I'm so excited right now is that we formed Solle, as you might say, organically. It was not a plan to go in and make a boom and then move on. Solle's a legacy company. We started with the first formula for Donna, which was adaptable and in the drink form, so vital. And then went to our official launch with 7 products. Never meant them to be everything, but we knew they would make significant change in everyone, those 7. And we've gone piece by piece over 10 years, adding products to fill specific needs. Why that passion, why that drive? Because of the trends we see accelerating in the world in terms of health and mental wellness. And what I mean by accelerating is more pronounced issues that won't be addressed in other ways. I do believe that. So right now, 10 years later, I know this is how I look at Solle. Solle's virtually unknown for all the wonderful, wonderful sharing and amazing work that's been done by mentors. In a grand scheme, Solle's virtually unknown, but has great strength. We've grown every single year and expanded, but in a way that you would say is more grassroots and organic. Our goals now and our structure that's just being laid into place now is to make ourselves known. And part of what we did over the pandemic was invest millions in machinery. And Erica knows this, you had Blake on. A very significant investment there to absolutely have much more control over supply. So I kind of look at all those things in the back of my mind and say, look at where we're poised. I combine that with what I know deep inside, just as all of you have said today, that Solle will make those changes in everyone. The changes are different in everyone, but positive and productive and lasting changes in every single person. And we've also got the benefit of over 10 years watching people who now 8 years into it would tell you, I didn't think I'd be another level or 2 levels better at 8 years than I was at 6 or at 4. There is a cumulative effect, which is the other thing we look for, because adaptogens are daily nutrients. The Chinese would have called them superior herbs because they're safe at any quantity for daily use. That's more our focus, using balance and building over time. And so when I think of all those things, the evidences and really the learning that's happened over the first decade, combined with where Solle's invested recently and poised to do, that's probably why I'm so excited, because I know, I also got to add one final thing, the strength of our mentors, people like you, Erica, that have a lot of experience, the heart, and also personal health experience. That's an infinite potential to make a difference. And that's honestly, that's what makes me happy. Seeing the changes, that is what makes me happy. All the changes, the financial ones, because that's what makes us happy. It's what fulfills us and drives us. It's more of a long-term legacy view.
Thank you so much for sharing. And I want to reiterate that point that Solle is virtually unknown, and the sky is the limit. Like, it is a limitless opportunity.